And this is our little Cecil today.
Yeah.
And we're eating more waffles, because that's been the thing lately.
Yeah.
And I should get a thing to put on me. You were going to
case
talk
he
about
poops,
something you... No. I'm going to get egg all over me otherwise.
Oh,
you were going to talk about something you heard yesterday on the radio?
Okay. Oh my heavens. So what is it? Nala Ayed or something like that. Ideas. I don't know how to exactly pronounce her name. I haven't seen it written up. So it was about Tahrir Square, so-called Freedom Square in Cairo. Oh, it was about, like the so-called revolution in 2011 in Egypt. And she'd been there. She was so nostalgic about it. She had 3 people, as I recall them, one journalist, one academic, and one writer. And theoretically, that was supposed to give a spectrum of opinion. And that's the CBC's idea of diversity. And it's unfortunately the basic idea of diversity amongst faux gauches. Like here we've got a journalist, left-leaning. Here we've got a author, left-leaning. Here we've got an academic who sounds left-leaning. I never really could figure out exactly what his beliefs were. But maybe we'll look at the little fella just going.
Yeah, he likes egg.
He loves egg.
Oh, I got a mess.
It gets a little messy.
Little bit messy.
But if you were tuned in like 2 days ago, was it 2 days ago?
He couldn't even hold his head up.
He couldn't hold his head up.
Look at it now. And he's starting to get some color on the back of his head. I don't know if you noticed that.
I hadn't noticed. So you think he's going to be a redhead now?
I think he will.
Ah.
I've tentatively thought he might be a woodpecker.
Oh.
But I don't know.
Yeah, he's kind of loud, like he doesn't make that sound, but he's very vocal.
Very vocal.
So he wasn't making sounds
no,
when I got hold of him.
But you can see even down here, there's a little bit of red there.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of red just around his crown.
I just thought that was
dried blood or something.
Yeah, exactly right.
But no, it's coming in.
Oh, so okay. Well, then he's a whole lot less beaten up than I thought. He got very soundly and roundly beaten up by a couple of crows. They were tag teaming him, in case you didn't tune in. And
do you want some more, baby?
He looked like death. Not even warmed over, poor little fella.
More?
But so he couldn't hold his head up. It was in sleeping position. I thought he'd broken his neck. He couldn't get water down him, his throat.
He couldn't swallow.
And I guess he had no strength really for swallowing, and that's an automatic sort of thing. It was just like coming out of his. We didn't do much of it, we didn't want to drown him, and just obviously we didn't. And a couple of drops, and it was kind of like bubbling out, or not quite frothing. That would be exaggeration. And so he couldn't articulate. He of course, he could barely move. He could kind of latch on to you, and he'd fight a little bit, because he thought we were just a
couple more crows,
or something like that. So Pauline thought up the idea. We didn't know what to feed him. She thought up this brilliant idea of feeding him eggs, just hen's eggs. And he seems to love it, and he'd be dead, I think, by now, if it wasn't somehow or another.
Well, it's coming out the other end.
Yeah, it's coming out the other end. So now he had some good parents. They, when they were literally beating the crap out of him, there were a couple of big poops in the gutter where they were assailing him, right? So he'd had a lot of food inside of him.
Yeah.
Huge. It wasn't like a regular bird.
That's all I'm going to give him for now.
So
That's a fair amount.
you know, so he's recovered now. He can hear. He didn't hammer his hearing, and somehow or another he's got some sort of sense of sight. His eyes are all closed up, but somehow or another he can sense light. And he can sense you. How much can he sense when you're downstairs, Pauline?
He knows when it's me at the top of the stairs now. And he's, come and give me some food.
Oh, he's very vocal. I thought he was going to be mad, but it's way too late to be mad. There's a lot of squalling. Thank you for changing it.
Well, he needs a new diaper.
Yeah, he's been pooping so much, and that's good because we want to keep the place that he's in as sterile as possible because we don't want an infection to set in. I don't think one has set in. Yeah. I thought that was just a smear of blood. But,
no, it's all in a pattern.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Anyway, we haven't been able to identify what kind of bird he is. We've identified he's called Cecil or Cecilia.
All I've
Cecil, I think, means blind in Latin. Cecilia is the feminine.
As far as I know, the feathers could change at this. The babies don't always look like the parents, and so I think, well, what am I going to look for? And so I look at the beak and go, well, that's a pretty big beak. Now he's preening himself.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. He's been preening. Now, he's not doing it because of, he wants to be in fashion. He's cleaning off the egg yolk.
Yeah, I'll show you.
It's
pretty cute.
The egg yolk. He's a clean little individual. But he's able to do that.
Yeah, he was. Now he stopped. But I better get him in so he doesn't get too cold.
Or just too cold.
He's pretty cold.
Yeah, he's got an infection now. So there's a little bit of moisture in the air. It's not coming down as precip yet, but it had kind of come down a little bit, not enough to really show on the sidewalk out there, Pauline's sidewalk or the alley, paving in the alley. But we can see it on the deck. This deck usually holds moisture quite efficient, or retains it. So, I think it's because it doesn't soak in. Pauline painted it quite well. The paint is in places come off. Yeah, now huge nostalgia for the Arab Spring, the 13 days, and perhaps that number is inadvertently significant, of revolution in Egypt. That was happening. That was when we still had cable, still had TV. We have neither now.
So you were talking about some...
I segued back into it.
Okay.
So I was trying to walk off multiple myeloma, and the doctors hadn't diagnosed it when the news was on, and I found that more depressing than having the undiagnosed multiple myeloma. So I was in pain. I could barely stand up. I was trying to walk around because I spent most of my time just lying on one side or the other, not on my back. On my back I get back spasms. Bad ones. Every time I turned over and was on my back temporarily, I was lucky if I got one back spasm. Usually multiple ones. It was every time I turned over. It was I won't say depressing time, but it could have been. I'm just not very susceptible to depression. But what I found depressing, it didn't depress me, but it was depressing, was the Arab Spring, and especially what was happening in Egypt. So this was right when it was happening, those 13 days. The first I heard about it, I said to Pauline, This isn't the Arab Spring. This is the Arab Fall. And it's going to be followed by the Arab Winter. I knew what was going to happen. I knew the fundamentalists would come to the fore. I knew it was like the Iranian Revolution, where you had the commies and other left-wing trash supporting the commies. What I'd call them as fellow travelers. That's what the commies called them, Sputniks, to their face, behind their backs, useful idiots. And that's people like Lenin. Lenin loved that. George Bernard Shaw, useful idiot. Sidney and Beatrice Webb, useful idiots. So here they were, these useful idiots. Well, when you support Muslim fundamentalists, you are a useless idiot. And you're not a Muslim fundamentalist yourself. So, because, there's no pretense of supporting democracy or supporting fairness, supporting like equality of opportunity or anything like that. With Muslim fundamentalists, there's no equality of opportunity for people of different religions. It's that simple. There's no tolerance of other religions. There is the idea of dimitude for people of the book. Well, not everyone's a person of the book. Strictly speaking, a person of the book is a Jew or a Christian. Ultimately, that was spread. Designation was spread to Zoroastrians. My understanding, might be a misunderstanding, cultivated carefully by the apologists for Islamic fundamentalism, is there was a spread to Hindus and theoretically to Buddhists, but I'm a little skeptical about that. Anyway, so what was a dimitude? There were all sorts of prescriptions put on Christians and Jews. They weren't forced to convert, but at the expense of, the main problem was they had to pay extra taxes. So, no, not every Muslim ruler enforced those things very strictly, but had tax for every male, and that's anyone who's got their secondary sex characteristics. I understand that's the usual formula for determining what's an adult. Every adult male. And then, what was it? You could, if you were a businessman, have to pay extra taxes as well. This is a Jew or Christian on what you sold. And if you own land, which might not have been that good of a chance in a Muslim society, being a Jew or Christian, you had to pay money, or you could be required to pay money on your land. That's brilliant. So one commentator says that early on in Muslim occupation...
So extra land tax.
Extra land tax. Well, you see, like, I was just getting to it, that early on, Muslims didn't have to pay any taxes because there hadn't been a lot of conversion of Christians and Jews into Muslims, and so all the taxes were paid by Christians and Jews. Yeah, really funny. And I'm sure people would say, "Well, that was then, this is now," that sort of stuff. Well, that was a system set up by Muhammad. Theoretically, Sharia law is whatever he did or said to do, and that's either you're required to do it or allowed to do it, depending on which. And there are many different gradations of what's required and what's allowed. It's not just A or B. And then, of course, there's stuff that's not allowed at all, stuff that's disapproved, and so on and so forth. There are many gradations of it. So it's not just A, B, C, or A, B, C, all allowed, like required, allowed, and disapproved. I have a few more gradations to it. So it's reasonably sophisticated. When I say reasonably, more sophisticated A, B, C. Not terribly sophisticated. Everything theoretically can be classified that way. And when everything's classified that way, once for all time, the only way you can have any sort of development is new technology where stuff wasn't envisioned back roughly
so women might be able to drive cars.
Women might be able to drive cars. I believe there was a move, and perhaps it even was successful in Saudi Arabia, to allow women to drive cars. It was blocked for the longest time. It would have been in the last, let's say 10 years, but I think it's the last maybe a couple of years it was allowed to happen. I haven't been following it that closely. I would say that there are more important things, but women's rights in Islamic society is incredibly important. So don't let someone like Simone, what is her name? Germaine Greer fool you. She's going around saying, well, we shouldn't criticize other cultures and stuff. What the heck? Southern culture ain't your culture. Southern American culture, Southeastern United States, that ain't your culture. Why should you be allowed to criticize it? You're an Australian. Why should you be allowed to criticize American culture at all? I suppose you'd say, oh, American imperialism is here. Well, Muslims are here. So it comes down to be a question of color. When you make things different from one color to another, you're racist. I'm calling you out, Germaine Greer. You're a racist, you sleazeball. She refuses to criticize so-called female cutting. That's clitoridectomy, female genital mutilation. Call it what it is. Stop doing this Orwellian euphemism.
It can get way worse than just clitoridectomy.
There are different stages, different.
Yeah.
You get lots of people saying, oh, there's a huge difference in practice amongst different Muslims. Okay, there are different types of clitoridectomy. Yeah, but it's...
No, and some of them, I was learning about it.
Yeah?
I don't know, a couple of years ago or something. Yeah. Some of the genital mutilation is... I can't remember what it's called, but they have different names for the different types, and one of them, the labia minora, are removed. And
yeah, that's serious stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes the women are sewn up so that they have a hard time menstruating even afterwards.
Yeah, so you'll get some people saying that happens, and suggesting it happens in all cases. The sewing up.
Once they have sex again, I mean, they're literally getting torn a new one because they're sewn right up almost. Just very little left. Anyway,
is it disgusting stuff? Yes, it is. But it's stuff that has to get discussed. We've got to have some conversations about this. Are you hearing Matt Galloway?
Yeah, there needs to be conversations about it.
There have to be conversations.
People are talking about. They really pussyfoot around talking about how doctors are having to see patients and stuff like that. And what do you do, right? I mean, we were talking about the foster care system yesterday in Canada and how in cases of abuse, it does need to be there. Even though the foster care system needs to improve there, but that's just a function of making sure it improves, right? You don't cut it out. And what do you do if you're a doctor and you come across something like that? I mean, people, they're not doing it here, or they shouldn't be. The doctors shouldn't be doing it here. But
what happens is they get sent back to Indonesia,
exactly,
they get sent
and then
to
they'll
Somalia,
show up
to Egypt, places where it's practiced.
In the healthcare here, and the doctors know, oh my gosh, this has been done. Well, what do? Do they report it as child abuse? I think they do. Honestly, I think you have to. This is not allowed in our culture.
Yeah, that's a democratic culture. We're not talking about Canada. We're not nationalists.
No,
we believe in democracy.
Parents can't be allowed to abuse their children. And that's irreversible. That's ridiculous. So
it's not allowed in our culture. It shouldn't be allowed in anything that purports to be a culture. It's that simple. So up until recently, it was being taught in religious studies department. It was taught elsewhere that clitoridectomy was found only in Africa. And it was practiced by neighboring Africans, non-Muslims. And I, as someone, I've been told, who is a part, only a small part, but a part African American, am insulted. Because the suggestion of that was, oh, you know, like the civilized Muslims were uncivilized by their neighboring Africans, non-Muslim Africans, and they retained or adopted, retained after conversion or adopted in the case of, you go in the Sudan and there are, Arabic is the national language now. And there would have been something like Arab, it wasn't just that the language spread there. Arab people who identify themselves as Arabs. And they've been slamming down on people in Darfur, fellow Muslims, but blacker than the people in Khartoum, in the central part of Sudan. And then the very black, on average, individuals in the former South Sudan. And people who are Christians and or what's called animus. So, and then it spread to Egypt. And people there are, well, they're basically Caucasians, okay? They'd be classified as people of color. And you get quite a spectrum. You get Anwar Sadat, former head of the Nazi commies in Egypt. And they used to call him slave. Why? He was half Sudanese. And I think one reason why Jimmy Carter favored Sadat over the Israelis he was negotiating with in the late 70s was Anwar Sadat had a bit of a resemblance to...
God, I'm cooking still.
Not B.B. King, but maybe Muddy Waters. Looked a little bit like Muddy Waters. A little bit darker skin, not nearly as dark as Muddy Waters, but somewhat different features. You'll run across some Egyptians who look more Caucasian than many Italians, or some Spaniards, some Greek people. So, yeah. Anyway, they were saying, and suggesting, they were saying it was confined to Africa, and suggesting it was spread from non-Muslims to Muslims. Then, in the last 5 years or so, it's coming out, it's found in Afghanistan. I'm talking about female genital mutilation It's found in heavily in Indonesia, and I'm afraid the book is still being written on where exactly in Islamic lands it's found. And so one report I ran across, and I mentioned it to a fellow who used to work on Canadian University services overseas. And I said, well, like there's one report that says 95% of women are Muslims, and because they're not all Muslims in Indonesia, there's some Christians and some animists, and a fair number of Christians actually in Indonesia.
You look like you could use some more raspberries.
No, that's okay. Oh yeah, maybe in the long run, but not right now. Anyway, so I mentioned that to him, and he was very skeptical. He was very dismissive of the idea, and he should know better of me. He's just reporting what someone said, and he married someone from there, someone significantly younger than him and way more better looking than him, and he'd given up the Muslim religion, presumably so had she, and he said, my wife's not cut. I'm going to myself, how do I make a cowardly amends for what he has said to me? But I don't care whether his wife has been cut or not. It's wonderful that she hasn't been. But how many women are there in Indonesia? Well, it'd be roughly half of roughly 300 million people.
Oh, no, I get it. The reason that he said that to you is because you had told him this figure, and you knew that he'd been Muslim.
Yeah.
So it's like you were suggesting that he had chosen a wife who had been cut.
I don't think he's that dumb.
Okay.
He's one of the smarter people.
So he wanted to. I'm just guessing. He just wanted to tell you that no, I'm not.
No. He was saying, he was very skeptical of the number 95%.
Okay.
And
well, it's good to be skeptical of.
You got to be skeptical of numbers, but so you see, I'm skeptical of his use of numbers, because you see, he comes from the yellow side of him. Now he's a very smart yellow. I call him yellow blue or something like that. He's not really yellow red like so many people are. He's a very smart individual, but he does not understand the scientific side of things. What you gave me, buddy, is in case you're watching, is a testimony. Testimonies mean nothing to me. And we generally hear about that in medicine. Someone says, hey, I cured myself by drinking a lot of water. I cured myself or whatever. I cured myself of cancer by the power of positive drinking. And one person does not make a case. You need, I gather, in statistics, somewhere around 12 where you sort of get a sense, but you've really got to get something like 30. And the more the merrier, in this case the sadder. But it doesn't mean anything. His wife might well have come from a more from a relatively secular background or whatever. It means